You believe love is supposed to complete you, that somewhere out there is someone who will finally get you, fill the holes, heal the wounds, finish your sentences, make you feel whole. This belief has nestled itself deep into your bones, not as a conscious thought, but as a silent blueprint, an invisible myth guiding your choices, disappointments, and longings. You've been told that love is the answer, that when you find the right person, it will feel effortless, natural, fated, as if your soul had been waiting lifetimes just to collide with theirs in the perfect alignment of stars and timing. But what if that's the most dangerous lie you've ever believed? Because here's the paradox. The more you chase that ideal, the more love slips through your fingers. The more you demand that someone complete you, the more fractured you become. The more you romanticize effortless union, the more exhausted you grow in the reality of it. And the more you believe love should just happen, the more you avoid the inner work it actually demands. So you find yourself confused, oscillating between passion and apathy, intimacy and withdrawal. You keep asking yourself, why does love hurt like this? Why does something so beautiful always end in disappointment, confusion, or numbness? Why does no one ever stay, or worse? Why do I always feel alone even when they do? You think it's them, or you, or bad timing, or incompatibility. But you never quite consider that the concept of love you've inherited, what Jung might call a projection of your unconscious, is fatally flawed. Poisoned at its root, there's a whisper beneath every heartbreak, every fight, every unmet expectation. A whisper saying, you were supposed to save me. And beneath that, I never learned how to save myself. This isn't your fault, not entirely. You were raised on stories that glorified romantic salvation, that told you suffering would be soothed by someone else's arms, that your wounds were beautiful only because someone else would kiss them better. Fairy tales never showed the scar tissue that forms after the kiss. They never showed the trauma that doesn't dissolve in someone else's love. They never warned you that longing for completion in another person is a longing born not of love, but of abandonment from yourself. Carl Jung knew this. He saw how we split ourselves in two. The persona we present to the world, and the shadow we repress. He saw how, when we meet someone who stirs our heart, we don't just fall in love with them. We project onto them the lost parts of ourselves we've disowned. They become the mirror, the fantasy, the carrier of our unlived life. And then, when they fail to live up to the image we've cast upon them, we feel betrayed. Not because they did something wrong, but because they stopped reflecting the illusion we were addicted to. This is the lie, that love is about finding someone who makes you feel whole, rather than confronting the parts of yourself you've never dared to love. So you're left wondering, what if real love begins after the fantasy dies? What if love is not about completion, but confrontation with your past, your shadow, your need for validation? What if the ache you feel in your relationships is not about not being loved enough, but about not knowing how to love yourself, without needing someone else to do it for you? And here's the deeper wound. We don't even realize we believe this lie. We move through relationships like sleepwalkers, searching for the one while running from ourselves. We blame our exes, our parents, our culture, but rarely ask, what if I've misunderstood love entirely? Because if love isn't the effortless bliss we've been promised, if it's not the perfect harmony of two souls destined to be, then what is it? And more disturbingly, if I've been chasing the wrong thing this entire time, what have I lost along the way? What does it cost to live by a lie so subtle, so seductive you never think to question it? Before you answer, pause, because to truly understand the danger of this belief, you must first unearth where it comes from. Buried deep beneath layers of psychology, culture, and unconscious desire. To understand how we got here, how you came to believe that love is supposed to fix you'll have to go back, way back, into the hidden machinery of your psyche, into the myths that shaped you before you even knew you had a self. And there, waiting in the dark, you'll find the real question. Is it love you're seeking? Or is it escape from the parts of yourself you don't yet know how to face? Now we go deeper. Let's expose the hidden architecture beneath this lie, and the psychological forces that planted it in your heart. Beneath the surface of every aching love song, every teary-eyed goodbye, and every intoxicating new beginning is a deeper longing, an archetypal hunger that Carl Jung believed was far older than we are. A hunger not merely for affection, but for wholeness. We don't just fall in love with people. We fall in love with symbols. When Jung spoke of the anima and animus, the unconscious feminine in men and the unconscious masculine in women, he wasn't speaking about gender roles. He was revealing that within every psyche is a split. Half of us remains unseen, buried, hidden. And when we meet someone who awakens our desire, what we're actually drawn to is the projection of that forgotten half. In Jungian terms, this projection is unconscious. It feels mystical, magnetic, meant to be. But in reality, it's a reflection of our own psychic fragments. Our unloved child, our silenced rage, our untapped creativity, our suppressed vulnerability. We don't fall in love with them. We fall in love with who we believe they will allow us to become. It's not love. It's spiritual compensation. This is the hidden problem. You are not falling in love with a person. You are falling in love with an image, a mirror, a fantasy constructed by your unconscious mind to restore what your conscious mind has denied. And society makes this worse. Modern culture thrives on a myth of romantic salvation. Every advertisement, movie, and story subtly enforces it. Find the one who will love all your broken pieces. But what if your broken pieces are not someone else's responsibility to hold? What if waiting to be chosen is another form of self-abandonment? The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer once described love as nature's trick, an illusion, meant to ensure reproduction. In his bleak view, love blinds us so we do not see clearly enough to resist its biological imperative. But even Schopenhauer's pessimism hides a painful truth. Love may not be about fulfillment, but about survival. Friedrich Nietzsche took it a step further. He warned that what we call love is often just the projection of our own lack of self-worth disguised as devotion. He wrote, "It is not a lack of love, but a lack of friendship that makes unhappy marriages." In other words, what begins as worship quickly becomes war, because we are not truly seeing the other, but simply trying to secure what we lack within ourselves. And what happens when the projection shatters? Disillusionment. That sacred moment when the godlike image you created of your lover collapses into something terrifyingly ordinary. You no longer see Aphrodite or Apollo. You see a flawed human being. Someone who is not here to complete you. Someone who carries their own unmet needs, traumas, shadows. In that moment, you are offered a choice. You can mourn the fantasy and move into real love. A love based not on projection, but on conscious seeing. Or you can retreat, blame them, replace them, begin the cycle again. Most people choose the second option, because it is easier to start over than to confront the terrifying truth Jung revealed. Every person you fall for is ultimately a messenger from your unconscious. They arrive not to complete you, but to reveal what you have yet to complete within yourself. That is the philosophical weight of this lie, that someone else will do your inner work for you, that you can escape your loneliness by merging with another without facing the fractures in your own soul. But here's the truth. Your loneliness is your soul calling you inward. Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor and existential psychiatrist, believed that love must emerge from meaning, not need. He saw that our desperation for connection often disguises a deeper despair, the loss of personal significance. We don't just want to be loved. We want someone to witness us, to tell us that our existence matters. But here's the twist Frankl exposed. Until we find that meaning in ourselves, no love will ever be enough. And so, the hidden problem perpetuates itself. We keep loving from a place of absence, of hunger, of lack, and we call that longing romantic. But Jung would warn you, when you love from your unconscious, you are not loving them. You are loving your shadow. You're loving the part of you that was exiled as a child, the anger you never expressed, the softness you were told was weakness, the ambition you repressed to be accepted, the shame you buried in silence. And when your lover triggers that shadow, when they stop playing the role you unconsciously assigned them, you do not feel relief. You feel rage. You feel betrayal. You feel like love is broken, but it's not. It's trying to wake you up, because love, at its highest level, is not a merging of halves, but a union of two already whole beings. And you cannot become whole by avoiding your brokenness. You must descend into it. You must sit with the loneliness instead of sedating it with romantic highs. You must meet your shadow without expecting someone else to hold it for you. You must see yourself fully before demanding that anyone else does. This is not what we are taught. It's not what we want to hear, but it is the first crack in the illusion. The first glimpse into a deeper understanding of what love truly is. And now, with the roots exposed, this myth of romantic salvation dismantled, you can begin to see just how far its consequences reach. Because this lie hasn't just shaped your love life, it has shaped your identity. And the cost is far greater than you think. You never questioned the feeling of being incomplete. You assumed it was natural, just part of being human. That hollow ache in your chest when you're alone. That quiet panic when a relationship starts slipping. That ache wasn't treated like a wound, but like a compass. It pointed you toward love. But what if the compass was broken? What if the ache wasn't a sign you needed someone, but a signal that you had lost yourself? The consequences of this misunderstanding are subtle at first. They show up in the form of expectations. Expectations that your partner should know what you need without you saying it, should make you feel seen without you doing the hard work of being visible, should give you the very things you are terrified to give yourself. Acceptance, affection, validation, meaning. And when they can't or won't or fail even once, you spiral. You accuse, withdraw, beg, or numb out. You oscillate between codependency and apathy. You become a chameleon or a judge. You start to believe that love is inherently chaotic, that pain is just part of the deal, that relationships are always high stakes, emotional casinos, where you bet your soul for scraps of connection. This is not love. This is unconscious trauma reenactment, dressed up as romance. Cognitive distortions reinforce the lie. You start to think in all or nothing terms. If they don't complete me, then they're failing me. You catastrophize small issues, fearing they mean the entire relationship is doomed. You personalize everything. You think their emotional withdrawal must be about your unworthiness. These patterns aren't accidental. They're neurologically wired through attachment trauma, early childhood modeling, and a society that sells codependency as devotion. Neuroscience shows that the brain, especially the amygdala and limbic system, doesn't distinguish well between emotional threats and physical ones. When you perceive disconnection, even subtly, your nervous system reacts as if you're being abandoned on a battlefield. Cortisol surges. The sympathetic nervous system activates. You don't just feel hurt, you feel unsafe. And so, your entire sense of identity becomes hijacked by this fear. You no longer ask, is this person right for me? You ask, how can I become right for them so they won't leave? This is the silent collapse of the self. Your boundaries blur. You say yes when you mean no. You stay quiet when your soul is screaming. You mold, bend, disappear, all in the name of love. But it's not love. It's survival instinct masquerading as romance. And the irony? The more you abandon yourself to keep love, the more unlovable you feel. Because deep down, you know the connection is based on performance, not authenticity. This is the hidden cost. You lose the relationship, and you lose yourself in the process. The culture doesn't help. Social media amplifies the fantasy and drowns the reality. You scroll past curated images of happy couples, internalizing the belief that their surface perfection is a reflection of your inner lack. Comparison becomes a silent torture. You don't just want love. You want love that looks a certain way, performs a certain way, tells the world you're lovable enough to be chosen. You begin to treat your relationships like a brand, a performance, a way to escape the unbearable feeling of inadequacy. Even intimacy becomes transactional. If I give you this part of me, will you stay? Will you approve? Will you fix what I never learned to fix myself? And yet it never works, because you are not meant to be completed. You are meant to be revealed to yourself. Carl Jung warned us that what we do not make conscious will rule our lives, and we will call it fate. And nowhere is this more true than in love. The unconscious patterns you don't face, the wounds, the projections, the needs you refuse to name, become your destiny. You keep attracting the same dynamics, the same disappointments, because some part of you is trying to recreate the original pain in order to finally win, finally heal, finally feel whole. But healing cannot happen in repetition. It happens in rupture, in awareness. Until then, your life becomes a feedback loop of unmet expectations and deepening shame. You start to believe you're too much, or not enough, or broken. You forget that these feelings are not facts. They're echoes from your unconscious, screaming to be integrated. And as this plays out in individuals, it scales into society. We live in a culture of broken attachments. Marriages end not from lack of love, but from lack of self-awareness. Families fracture. Children grow up modeling relationships on scarcity and emotional survival. A collective wound deepens, a belief that love is pain, that vulnerability is weakness, that independence means isolation and dependence means surrender. We teach our children to chase approval instead of cultivating self-worth. We sedate our loneliness with distractions instead of confronting the soul's deeper hunger for integration. We consume romance endlessly, hoping that maybe this story, this person, this time will finally make us feel okay. But the void cannot be filled externally, and every time we try, it grows larger. This is the ultimate unseen consequence. We mistake the pursuit of love for the pursuit of self, and lose both. We keep asking love to do what only the inner journey can accomplish. We keep begging partners to fix the emptiness that was never theirs to heal. And as long as that belief remains, so too will the cycle of disappointment, disillusionment, and emotional erosion. But there is another way. A radical shift is possible, one that dismantles the entire architecture of this lie and replaces it with something terrifying, beautiful, and liberating. It begins when you stop asking how to find love and start asking what it means to become whole. You don't fall out of love with people. You fall out of illusion. That moment when your chest stops aching and your hands stop trembling and the person before you no longer feels like oxygen. It's not love fading. It's clarity arriving. It's the death of projection. The mirror has shattered, and now you must confront what you were really looking at all along. Yourself, refracted through someone else. And this is where the rebellion begins. Because to awaken from the lie of love as salvation is not a gentle realization. It's a psychological exorcism. It forces you to confront every fairy tale you were fed, every wound you romanticized, every need you outsourced to another person as if they were your therapist, your parent, your savior. Carl Jung believed in a concept called individuation. The process of integrating all the fragmented, disowned parts of the psyche into a unified self. He saw this as the central task of human development. Not comfort, not happiness, wholeness. And individuation is not a poetic idea. It is an act of war against your conditioning. You must peel away the layers of who you thought you were, who you pretended to be, who you were told you should be, and reclaim what you exiled. The soft, the wild, the angry, the afraid, the needy, the divine. Because every time you said, "I just want someone to love me as I am," you were really whispering, "I don't know how to love myself yet." Here's the first act of rebellion. Stop making other people responsible for your worth. Your partner is not your mirror. Your friend is not your reassurance machine. Your lover is not your emotional janitor. They are not here to absorb your shadow. And if they are, if you've built a relationship where one of you is the emotional caretaker and the other is the wounded child, then you're not in love. You're in a trauma bond. Break it. Here's the second rebellion. Feel your loneliness without flinching. This is where most people recoil. They'd rather scroll, date, drink, work, sleep, escape. Because to sit in silence and feel the weight of your own aloneness is terrifying. But it's also the threshold. Nietzsche once said, "No one can build you the bridge on which you, and only you must cross the river of life." That river? It's the void you've been trying to fill with love. That aching emptiness? It's not a wound, it's a portal. When you finally stop trying to escape it, you begin to hear it. And when you hear it, you begin to realize something shocking. You are not empty. You are unmet. You've met lovers. You've met teachers. You've met heartbreak. But you have not yet fully met yourself. And that is the most revolutionary act of all. Here's the third rebellion. Turn inward with devotion, not with shame, not with punishment, not with the goal of fixing yourself so you'll be lovable, but with reverence. Treat yourself as you would someone you're trying to fall in love with. Ask yourself, what do I feel when no one is watching? What parts of me do I silence to be liked? What have I been begging others to give me that I've never given myself? This is not self-help. This is soul retrieval. It's refusing to let your inner child keep begging for love in the bodies of strangers. It's walking into the cave of your fear and sitting there until your eyes adjust to the dark, until the monsters reveal themselves not as enemies, but as exiled aspects of you, waiting to be integrated. Rebellion is quiet. It's not fireworks or breakups or cutting your hair and booking a solo trip to Bali. Sometimes it's just the moment you stop apologizing for your needs, or the moment you choose to pause before reacting, or when you realize you'd rather be alone than adored for a mask. True rebellion is choosing consciousness over comfort. And here's the final act of rebellion. Learn to love without needing to possess. Love without projection. Without needing someone to rescue you. Without turning the relationship into a solution for your pain. When you stop needing love to fix you, it becomes something else entirely. Not a drug, not a dream, but a sacred space where two people meet. Not to complete each other, but to see each other clearly. From that place, you don't fall in love. You stand in it. You hold space for the other without needing them to be your savior. You communicate from truth, not fear. You set boundaries without guilt. You give without sacrificing yourself. You receive without collapsing. And this is where the old myth dies. The lie that someone is coming to complete you? Gone. The belief that love must be effortless? Buried. The fantasy that you can be saved by anyone other than yourself? Burned to ash. What remains is real, raw, sometimes quiet, often difficult, but deeply, exquisitely true. And from here, something strange happens. You start attracting people who are also doing the work. People who don't need you to play a role. People who love you not because you complete them, but because you challenge and mirror and honor them. This is what Jung meant by psychological integration. Not perfection, but authenticity. And here's the paradox. When you no longer need love to survive, you become capable of loving in the most profound way possible. You stop grasping. You start offering. You stop seeking salvation. You start becoming it. Now the path ahead is clear, but not easy. You've dismantled the fantasy. You've exposed the myth. You've stood at the threshold of the unknown. But one question still remains. A final truth. A final revelation. A shift so powerful, it will not just transform your love life, but your entire relationship to reality itself. Are you ready to see what's been waiting for you beneath the lie? There comes a moment when the smoke clears. Not all at once, but slowly, as if your soul has stopped holding its breath. The noise of desire, fantasy, fear, they begin to quiet. You no longer feel the compulsive ache to be seen, chosen, validated. You're not numb. You're not detached, but something fundamental has shifted. You are no longer searching for love, because you've realized the truth. You were never incomplete. You were never broken. You were only asleep. The most dangerous lie you believed about love wasn't just that someone else would complete you, it was that you weren't already whole. This was the core illusion, the existential sleight of hand. Carl Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But most of us spend our lives trying to become who we think will be most loved, most approved, most wanted. And in doing so, we commit the deepest betrayal, not against others, but against the self. Here is the ultimate truth. Love is not something you find. Love is something you remember. You are not a broken cup waiting to be filled by someone else's presence. You are not a starving soul begging for emotional scraps. You are not a shattered being seeking to be glued back together by the tenderness of a stranger. You are the ocean that forgot it was water. You are the flame pretending to be cold. You are the source, not the seeker. Love is not what you get when someone finally sees you. Love is what you become when you finally see yourself. Clearly, fully, without distortion. Not just the parts you polished for public consumption, but the parts you buried. The fears, the wounds, the desires too wild or too tender to reveal. And when you see yourself like that, without shame, without denial, something remarkable happens. You stop begging to be loved, because you are love. You begin to realize that the other was never meant to be your savior. They were the catalyst, the mirror, the sacred provocation sent to trigger your awakening. It was never about them. It was always about what they stirred in you. That longing, it wasn't for a person. It was for union with yourself. That heartbreak, it wasn't the loss of another. It was the breaking open of the false identity you had constructed to be loved. That loneliness, it wasn't a sign of failure. It was a call inward, a sacred hunger for wholeness. And when you answer that call, not with panic or escape, but with presence, you begin to feel something ancient reawaken in you. A kind of stillness, a kind of knowing. You realize that love is not something that completes you. It's something that reveals you. Jung understood this when he spoke of the self, not the ego, not the persona, but the totality of the psyche, the union of conscious and unconscious, shadow and light, feminine and masculine, chaos and order. He believed that only when we integrate all aspects of ourselves can we truly love, because only then are we no longer projecting our needs onto others. We are meeting them from wholeness, and from that wholeness, love becomes something else entirely. It becomes a gift, not a transaction. It becomes a witnessing, not a rescue. It becomes a co-creation, not a completion. You begin to love without fear, not because you are invulnerable, but because you are rooted. Rooted in the deep truth that you are not defined by who stays or who leaves. Not shaken by whether someone understands you or not. Not devastated when the fantasy dies, because you no longer mistake fantasy for fulfillment. You are already home, and from this home within yourself, you can finally love another, truly, consciously, freely, not because you need them, but because you choose them. That is the final, most powerful realization. Love is not what saves you. Love is what you give when you've already saved yourself. It's what arises when the soul is no longer reaching outward in desperation, but overflowing inward with presence. It's what happens when you no longer treat love as an escape from pain, but as a sacred arena for truth. And that truth is this: you were never waiting to be loved. You were waiting to remember who you are. So let the old myth die. Bury the lie that someone else will make you whole. Grieve the time you lost chasing ghosts. Forgive yourself for not knowing sooner, and then rise. Not as someone who has been loved, but as someone who is love, and always has been. Let this be your new myth. Let this be your new compass. Not to seek love, but to become it. Not to find the one, but to be the one. First for yourself, and then for whoever is brave enough to meet you there. Because now, finally, you know, the most dangerous lie about love was that it lived outside of you.